This is the story of a young village boy named Chinedu. A story of pain. A story of betrayal. A story of perseverance. And a story that proves that destiny can never be destroyed by jealousy. In a small village in eastern Nigeria, surrounded by green farmlands and dusty roads, lived a young boy named Chinedu. His family was poor. Very poor. Their house was built with mud walls and an old zinc roof that leaked whenever rain fell. Sometimes they ate only once a day. Sometimes they slept hungry. But despite the poverty, Chinedu carried something many rich people did not have. He carried hope. Every morning before the first cock crowed, he followed his father to the farm. While other boys slept, Chinedu worked. While others played, he learned. After farm work, he rushed to school. After school, he helped his mother sell vegetables in the market. Life was difficult, but he never complained. The villagers often looked at him and said, "That boy will become somebody one day." But not everyone was happy about those words. Some people smiled at him in public and hated him in secret. Some of those people were his own relatives. His aunts, his cousins, people who shared his blood. Instead of supporting him, they became jealous. They watched him closely. They saw his determination. They saw his intelligence. And they feared what he might become. One rainy season, tragedy struck. Chinedu's father suddenly fell sick. The illness came without warning. At first, everyone thought he would recover. But as the days passed, his condition became worse. The family sold their goats. They sold their chickens. They spent every naira they had trying to save him. Still, the sickness refused to leave. Then one heartbreaking morning, Chinedu's father took his final breath. The news spread through the village like wildfire. Women cried. Men shook their heads in sorrow. The family gathered for the burial. And Chinedu stood beside the grave, struggling to accept that the man who had taught him everything was gone forever. The burial ended. The mourners left. But the family's troubles were only beginning. A few days later, his father's brothers gathered. Chinedu expected comfort. He expected support. He expected family. Instead, he witnessed betrayal. The uncles shared his father's farmland among themselves. They took his livestock. They took his farming tools. They took almost everything that belonged to the dead man. His mother pleaded with them. She begged them to consider the future of her son. But their hearts had become harder than stone. Within days, Chinedu and his mother were left with almost nothing. The people who should have protected them had become the people hurting them. Months passed. Life became harder than ever. One evening, while returning from a small job, Chinedu overheard some of his relatives talking beneath a tree. One laughed and said, "That boy thinks he will become successful." Another replied, "He should stop dreaming." Then another voice spoke, "We will make sure he never rises above us." Those words pierced his heart, not because they came from strangers, but because they came from family. That night, Chinedu could not sleep. He sat beneath a mango tree outside their house. The moon shone brightly above him. Tears rolled down his face. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what loneliness felt like. Yet while he sat there, something began to grow inside him. A decision. A dangerous decision. A life-changing decision. He realized that if he remained in the village, his dreams might die before they even had a chance to live. He had no money, no connections, sport, but he still had hope, and hope was enough. The next morning, he told his mother, "I am leaving." His mother stared at him in silence. She understood immediately. A tear rolled down her cheek. She knew the journey would be difficult. She knew the dangers waiting outside the village. But she also knew her son carried greatness within him. She entered the house, returned with a small bag, and handed it to him. Then she placed both hands upon his head and prayed, "My son, wherever you go, may God guide your footsteps. May every door closed against you open. May every enemy fail. May your future be greater than your past." Chinedu hugged her tightly. Neither of them knew when they would meet again. With a small bag hanging from his shoulder and a dream burning inside his heart, Chinedu left the village. He walked down the dusty road, past the farms, past the river, past everything he had ever known. He did not look back, because sometimes the only way forward is to leave the familiar behind. And as the village disappeared behind him, Chinedu stepped into the unknown, not knowing that one day he would return, and the same people who betrayed him would celebrate him. Chinedu sat quietly inside the old commercial bus as it sped along the highway. His eyes remained fixed on the window. The village he had known all his life was now far behind him. Ahead of him lay a future he could not see. A future filled with uncertainty. A future filled with challenges. But also a future filled with possibilities. After many hours of traveling, the bus finally arrived in a large city. The noise was overwhelming. Cars honked endlessly. Traders shouted from every direction. People hurried along the streets. Everything seemed to move so fast. Chinedu stepped down from the bus and looked around. For the first time in his life, he felt completely alone. Nobody knew him. Nobody was waiting for him. Nobody cared whether he succeeded or failed. He carried only a small bag and a heart full of determination. That first night was one of the longest nights of his life. He had nowhere to sleep. No relatives. Friends. No place to call home. As darkness covered the city, Chinedu found an unfinished building and curled up in one corner. The cold wind blew through the open structure. Mosquitoes buzzed around him, yet sleep refused to come. Fear filled his mind. Questions filled his heart. Had he made a mistake? Should he return home? Would he survive in this city? But every time those thoughts appeared, he remembered the words of his relatives. "We will make sure he never rises above us." And immediately, his determination returned. He refused to go back. He refused to become their laughter. The following morning, the struggle began. Chinedu searched everywhere for work. He walked for hours under the hot sun. Shop after shop. Street after street. Market after market. The answer was always the same. No vacancy. Work. Come back another day. Sometimes people ignored him completely. Sometimes they insulted him. Sometimes they laughed at him. But Chinedu kept moving. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Life became a daily battle for survival. There were days when he had only one meal. There were days when he drank water just to calm his hunger. Yet he never gave up. Whenever he found small jobs, he accepted them. He carried heavy loads in crowded markets. He washed vehicles. He cleaned shops. He unloaded goods from trucks. Any honest work became an opportunity. The work was difficult. His body often ached. His hands became rough. His clothes became worn. But inside him, Something powerful was growing. Character, discipline, endurance. Many people only see success. Very few people see the sacrifices that create success. Years passed. Slowly, Chinedu began to change. His confidence grew. His understanding of people grew. His experience grew. And then one afternoon, something happened that would change his life forever. While working inside a warehouse, Chinedu noticed an elderly businessman observing him. The man stood quietly for several minutes, watching, studying, evaluating. While others complained about work, Chinedu continued working diligently. While others wasted time, Chinedu remained focused. Eventually, the businessman approached him. "My young man," he said, "what is your name?" "Chinedu," he replied respectfully. The businessman smiled. "And where are you from?" Chinedu briefly shared his story. He spoke about his village, his father's death, the betrayal, the poverty, and the journey that brought him to the city. The businessman listened carefully. When Chinedu finished speaking, the old man remained silent for a moment. Then Reese smiled. "You remind me of myself." Those simple words became the beginning of a new chapter. The businessman offered Chinedu a permanent position in his company, not because he felt sorry for him, but because he recognized something valuable: integrity, hard work, character, qualities that money cannot buy. For the first time in years, Chinedu felt hope rising again. He worked harder than ever before. Every day, he arrived before everyone else. Every day, he left after everyone else. The businessman noticed everything. Soon, he began teaching Chinedu about business. He taught him how money works. He taught him how successful people think. He taught him how to manage opportunities. He taught him how to turn small beginnings into great achievements. Chinedu listened carefully. He asked questions. He took notes. He learned from every mistake. And little by little, he grew. Years passed. The poor village boy was no longer the frightened teenager who arrived with nothing. He had become a confident young man. One day, the businessman called him into his office. "Chinedu," he said, "I have watched you for many years. You are ready." The old man handed him an opportunity to manage an important business contract. It was a risk, a very big risk. Failure could destroy everything. Success could change everything. Many people would have been afraid. But Chinedu remembered something. He had already survived hunger. He had already survived rejection. He had already survived betrayal. Compared to those battles, this challenge was small. So he accepted. He worked day and night. He paid attention to every detail. He refused to give excuses. And when the project ended, it became a huge success. The profits were enormous. The businessman was impressed. For the first time in his life, Chinedu earned more money than he had ever imagined. But instead of wasting it, he invested wisely. He started small businesses. He expanded gradually. He remained disciplined. He remained humble. And success continued to follow him. One opportunity led to another. One investment led to another. One breakthrough led to another. Before long, Chinedu owned businesses. He employed workers. He managed large projects. People who once ignored him now respected him. People who once doubted him now admired him. The city that once rejected him now celebrated him. Yet despite all his success, one thing never left his heart. His village. His mother. The dusty roads where his journey began. And one evening, while sitting alone in his beautiful office, Chinedu looked out through the window and smiled. The time had finally come. The boy who left with nothing was ready to return home. This Chimi. He would not return as a victim. He would return as a testimony. For many years, Chinedu had dreamed about this moment. The moment he would finally return home. Not to seek revenge, not to prove a point, but to show that determination can defeat betrayal. One bright morning, he stood outside his office building. Several luxury vehicles were waiting. His staff stood nearby. Business partners shook his hand. Everyone knew this journey was special. This was not a business trip. This was a journey back to his roots. As the convoy moved out of the city, Chinedu sat quietly in the back seat. His mind traveled through memories. He remembered the days of hunger. He remembered the nights he slept in unfinished buildings. He remembered carrying heavy loads in crowded markets. He remembered the insults, the rejection, the loneliness, and most importantly, he remembered his mother's prayers. Those prayers had carried him through every storm. Hour after hour, the vehicles continued their journey. Then finally, the familiar roads began to appear. The green farmlands, the tall palm trees, the narrow dusty paths. The village was close, very close. News of his arrival spread quickly. Someone saw the convoy approaching. Another person ran through the village shouting, "Chinedu is back. The boy who left is back." Within minutes, excitement filled the entire community. Men left their farms. Women left their shops. Children ran through the streets. Everyone wanted to see him. The convoy slowly entered the village. People lined both sides of the road. Many could not believe their eyes. The same boy who had once left carrying a small bag had returned surrounded by success. When Chinedu stepped out of the vehicle, silence covered the crowd. Some stared in amazement. Some whispered among themselves. Others simply stood frozen. The transformation was unbelievable. He was well dressed, confident, respected, successful. Yet his smile remained the same. His humility remained the same. And then, among the crowd, he saw someone. His mother. Oh, there now. Her hair had turned gray, but her eyes were exactly the same. The moment their eyes met, tears filled both of them. Without saying a word, Chinedu ran toward her. She opened her arms, and mother and son embraced tightly. The crowd watched in silence. Many wiped tears from their eyes. For years, this woman had prayed for her son. For years, she had believed in him when nobody else did. And now, her prayers had become reality. After a few moments, Chinedu gently held her hands and said, "Mother, your prayers brought me home." The entire village erupted into applause. But not everyone was comfortable. Among the crowd stood the same relatives who had betrayed him, the same uncles who took his father's land, the same cousins who mocked his dreams, the same people who believed he would never succeed. Now they stood quietly, unable to look him in the eyes, ashamed, embarrassed, broken by the success of the boy they once underestimated. Many villagers expected Chinedu to humiliate them. Many expected revenge. After all, they had caused him great pain. But Chinedu had learned something important during his journey. Bitterness destroys the person carrying it. Forgiveness sets the heart free. Instead of attacking them, he greeted them respectfully. Instead of insulting them, he smiled. Instead of seeking revenge, he chose peace. The villagers were shocked. That day, they discovered that true greatness is not measured by wealth. True greatness is measured by character. A few days later, the village elders organized a grand celebration. It became the biggest celebration the community had seen in years. Traditional drummers filled the air with powerful rhythms. Dancers performed across the village square. Songs of joy echoed through the streets. People came from neighboring villages to witness the event. Everyone wanted to celebrate Chinedu, the village boy who had become a symbol of hope. When the celebration reached its peak, the elders invited Chinedu to address the crowd. He slowly stepped forward. Thousands of eyes focused on him. The village became quiet. Every person waited to hear his words. Chinedu looked around. He saw young boys who reminded him of himself. He saw struggling mothers. He saw elderly men and women. He saw drums. He saw potential. And then he began to speak. "My people," he said, "there was a time when I stood here with nothing. There was a time when many people believed I would never succeed. There was a time when hunger was my companion and rejection was my shadow. But today, I stand before you as living proof that your circumstances do not determine your future." The crowd applauded loudly. Continued. "Never allow betrayal to destroy your dreams. Never allow poverty to kill your ambition. Never allow rejection to convince you that you are worthless. Sometimes the people who doubt you today will celebrate you tomorrow." The applause grew even louder. Then Chinedu paused. He smiled and made an announcement that nobody expected. "I did not return only to celebrate. I returned to give back." The crowd became silent again. "I will build a new school for this village." Cheers exploded across the gathering. "I will renovate the health center." The applause became even louder. "I will create scholarships for children who cannot afford education." Women began crying tears of joy. "I will create jobs for our young people." The celebration became overwhelming. People shouted. People danced. People praised God. For the first time, many villagers realized that Chinedu's success was not only for himself. It was for everyone. Months later, construction began. A beautiful school rose from the ground. The health center was transformed. Employment opportunities increased. The entire village began to change. Copy turned. Progress returned. Opportunity returned. Years passed, and Chinedu became one of the most respected men in the region. Not because he was rich. Not because he owned businesses. Not because he drove expensive vehicles. But because he remembered where he came from. Because he lifted others as he climbed. Because he turned pain into purpose. And because he proved that success means little if it cannot help others. Today, whenever people tell his story, they remember one powerful lesson. The boy who was betrayed became the man who was celebrated. The dreamer who was rejected became the leader who was respected. The child who left with nothing returned with everything. And so, my people, if you are listening to my voice today, do not give up. If life, do not give up. People betray you, do not give up. If doors close, do you not give up. Your story is not over. Your season is coming. Your breakthrough is coming. Your testimony is coming. Remember Chinedu, the village boy they betrayed. the young man they rejected, the dreamer they laughed at, who returned home not with anger, not with revenge, but with greatness. Because destiny may be delayed, but destiny can never be denied.